Hey guys, I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23. You've seen my review on the Echo 1 Platinum Edition. You've seen the new stock installation. Now we're going to be going inside of the gun. It has performed very well on the field. I've taken it out. It's been really good. Run 0.3s in it or 0.28s. It runs fantastically. So we're going to go inside the gun today and actually see what makes this gun perform so beautifully. Now, before we get started, realize that opening up your gun by yourself does void your warranty. Also, disconnect your battery and dump your mag before proceeding. Now, because this gun is rear wire, don't have to worry about wires going to the handguard or anything like that. So first things first, take a punch and a hammer and just lightly tap this pin out. It is self-retaining, so it's not going to go anywhere. Disassembling your receiver for the first time can be a little bit tricky. The Echo 1 Platinum Edition is very tightly put together. Because we now have access to it right away, we're going to take a look at the hop-up chamber and the barrel first. Now, just because the hop-up chamber is clear and made of plastic doesn't mean it's a bad chamber. It actually performs very well, gets great range and accuracy, and has very good compression. The dials are very firm and are not going to move while you're shooting. One thing I did not like about the chamber, however, is that the end of it is not very tight. The barrel ring here doesn't want to stay in place. So when you're actually moving the gun up and down, even on the field, you can hear that thing sliding up and down the barrel. The crowning on the end of the barrel is very nicely done. It protrudes about maybe 7 millimeters into the barrel. Now, a standard barrel is about 6.08 millimeters. This one's a little tighter at 6.06. The bucking is relatively soft and seems to be made of very good material. Now, we have the hop-up and barrel out of the way, but what about the gearbox? Let's go ahead and dive into that. If you are working on this gun from here on out, having a gun wrench makes things a lot easier. Use your gun wrench to loosen the wheel right here. And use a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew the long Phillips head screw inside of the buffer tube. From there, you can go ahead and take it off. The wiring to the buffer tube does have two quick detach connectors, making disassembly a little bit easier. Next up, go ahead and remove your bolt catch. This is actually very simple, even though it might not seem like it. Punch out the small pin that sits right here. Now press down on the small lever right here. Then your bolt catch should come right out. The mag catch is just like the real steel version, so you will have to push up on the release button and manually unscrew it. Unscrew the two screws on your motor plate here. Then disconnect the red and the black wire from the motor. Once completed, you can go ahead and pull out your motor. The motor itself is black, has no stickers or markings on it whatsoever, and seems like it has a decent amount of torque. Enough to pull the spring that's in there that's shooting about 360 feet per second. The two screw holes inside your pistol grip are brass, so they aren't going to strip out anytime soon. From there are two screws just inside of the pistol grip. Use a long Phillips head to unscrew those. Now punch out your rear body pin. This is also self-retaining, so there's no need to worry about losing it. Finally, punch out the pin that sits right here in your lower receiver. From there, your gearbox should slide right out of the lower receiver. Getting inside your gearbox is a fairly simple procedure. First, go ahead and remove the bolt catch feature right here. And if you have been shooting your gun and have not decocked the piston, there's a little notch in the gearbox right here where you can put a small screwdriver device in and let everything go. On the back of your gearbox, screwed into the back of the spring guide, will be this flathead screw. I recommend removing that so you can actually stick a long rod or screwdriver into your spring guide, making removing the spring a lot easier. Now, just taking out the final screw here of the gearbox. Go ahead and lift off the shell and see what all is in here. Notice I have my long rod here, keeping the spring under control. Alright, with the gearbox shell open, I can go ahead and remove everything, and we'll check it out in detail. First thing we're going to look at here is your air compression system. This includes your nozzle, tappet plate, cylinder, cylinder head, piston, and piston head. Now we'll go ahead and start with the piston head. It does have 8 little ports on it. It always is good to have a ported piston head. That way, when your piston is drawn back and your spring's compressed, it's going to put less stress on your piston, your gears, your motor, your electrical system, pretty much everything. And it's going to draw in less dirt from your nozzle, which is good. So all the dirt that could be on your BB isn't drawn into your cylinder. It is aluminum, so it's pretty much never going to break on you. I have had plastic piston heads break, so having a metal one is a little bit of a plus. It doesn't have a bearing, but it has a plastic washer back there, which almost acts as a bearing. Your piston is a clear polycarb, just like the hop-up chamber and several other internal parts in the gearbox. It has one metal tooth, and the second to last tooth is removed. It also has the speed rail, so a little bit less surface area on there, and I've noticed it does help to spread grease a little bit faster around your piston. Your tappet plate is made of the same clear polycarb as the piston. It is somewhat flexible, which is good. Your nozzle does, believe it or not, have an O-ring in there, which is a good plus. It is also made of polycarb, and it seems to be really nice and made of good material. Your cylinder is a Type 2 cylinder, so it has the port in just the right spot for an M4 length barrel, which does help with keeping your FPS right where you want it, rate of fire, a number of other things as well. It is a chromium. It's a little bit heavier than a brass cylinder, which is kind of nice. And it seems to be pretty smooth on the inside as well. Your cylinder head is a polycarb design, has one O-ring, and a pretty good thrust damper on the back. Let's go ahead and see how the air seal is. You can put your finger over the nozzle here and just push. And when you get a really good bounce like this, it means your air seal is really good, if not perfect. Next, we're going to talk very briefly about the gearbox shell. It is a little bit different. We have the little hole here, so it can fit in other guns that have similar gearboxes like this. It also does have the reinforcement right here, which seems to make it pretty strong. The shell also utilizes 8mm solid metal bushings, which is very nice. And the spring feels like it's about an M120 power. I'm kind of surprised I'm only getting about 360 feet per second out of it. I'll see if when I reassemble it I can get a little bit more. The spring guide is made out of metal, has bearings, and the bearings are elevated just a little bit, so give you a little extra bit of power as well. Very good quality item. Next, we'll take a look at the gear set. It is a little bit interesting. Notice you do have springs on the sector and spur gear here. This is usually referred to as an auto-shimming gear set. It doesn't quite auto-shim, it's more like shocks almost that you might find in your car. It is going to make it so you don't really have to shim the top of these two gears. These springs will push down on them, kind of acting as shims. They're not as precise as actually shimming them, but they work pretty well. I am very happy to see that this gearbox is well-greased gears. Sometimes I find gears that are just completely dry, and it's really not good for them. Having this small amount of good quality grease on here really helps things out. Now, aside from the thrust bearings, I notice that this gearbox is shimmed very well. That's a really nice touch. Now, although it never had it break, the last tooth on the sector gear here is a little bit beefier. It's kind of a nice touch. One nice little bonus on the gear set is that you actually get a sector chip. This can help improve your feeding, and it's good for high rates of fire. Lastly, we'll look at the wiring assembly inside the gearbox. The trigger shuttle looks to contact the trigger contacts very nicely. Should not have a problem running an 11-1 LiPo on this for a little while. Now, I have to admit, it is nice to see heat shrink in all the right places. Now, after seeing the internals of the Echo 1 Platinum Edition M4 firsthand, I'm curious, what would you upgrade personally? Leave your upgrade list in the comments. I'm really curious to see. So, what do you guys think of the internals of the Echo 1 M4 Platinum Edition? I think they're pretty rock solid. Really explains why this gun performs so well on the field. Stick around. We're not done with this guy quite yet. Might just throw a few upgrades in there, so stick around.